Mexico, where it has a high degree of biodiversity within the whole country. It's also situated in between the Atlantic and Pacific. It is a corridor for a lot of resources, as well as a very rich place in natural resources.
La otra parte que hay que hablar de Oaxaca tiene que ver
up until now, the loss to the communities has been measured to a certain extent in the number of people who have been assassinated, which officially is 27, but is probably much more. 600 detained, but again, the official numbers, there's probably many, many more. 400 who have to actually go and report to the government, and also all the people who have been removed from their communities. This is not the only cost of the struggle.
El costo se tiene que medir en aquellas cosas que los medios no han estado.
Some of the other major costs that have happened because of the struggle and because of the organizing that's been happening and the repression as a result has been not just all of the numbers that we just described, but also in a way that cannot be so easily measured, that the media really has a hard time, even the progressive media has a hard time really measuring in the sense of people's fear. All of this repression has caused so much fear in terms of people's mistrust of where the police are more feared now than criminals were. There's so much fear in terms of even being in your house now, because there's so much threat in terms of the state actually coming after you if you organize.
There are so many ways that voices are silenced in Burma. Violence is consistently used to oppress peoples in Burma, and the major hallmark of this was on August 8th, 1988, which has the anniversary just passed, and people went to the streets demanding freedom and democracy. As a result, about 10,000 people were killed and 1,400 activists were put into prison. This, of course, is official numbers. The numbers could more potentially be larger. So, in terms of laws that are currently in place in the country, law in 1957, which was a penal code, can sentence anyone up to 25 years imprisonment or the death penalty if you're charged with treason. And the military has the authority basically to define what treason is. And they've used it to suppress media, activists, saying that they're threatening the state of Burma, that it threatens the sovereignty of the country. The military practices forced labor. One of the major publicized examples of this is the pipeline, the oil pipeline, and they use forced labor. The companies that are involved, one of them is Unical. There is also displacement. Villages are burned down. They're forced into military-run villages. There's also the issue of child soldiers. There's inadequate access to health care and education, and that's just to name a few.
Wanted to share with you one of the stories of the journalists that have been killed in the Philippines since 2001 for their activism. So this is a picture of Marlene Esperat, and I'll just read a short story here. On March 24th, 2005, the Esperat family was sitting down to dinner at their home. Around the table was James Esperat, Marlene's son, who was 10 years old at the time, Kevin, who was 13, and Marlene's daughter. Her husband was in the other room. A young man walked in, and he said, "Good evening, are you Marlene Esperat?" And she said, "Yes, I am." And he pulled out a gun and shot her in the head. And that's an excerpt from a speech by a Canadian journalist, Declan Hill, who actually wrote a piece about her story, and it was aired on CBC radio, and he won an award in Best Investigative Journalism by the Canadian Association of Journalists. So Marlene Garcia Esperat was a 46-year-old chemist who became an anti-corruption activist and columnist for the Midland Review, a community paper in central Mindanao. Before her death, Esperat had filed 24 graft and corruption cases and other complaints of irregularities against local and national officials before the Ombudsman and other quasi-judicial bodies, including a 432 peso million fertilizer scam involving former Department of Agriculture officials. After she died, 3 men were found guilty of charges on her murder, and they were sentenced to life imprisonment. 2 of her convicted killers confessed that they were paid by intermediaries representing 2 high government officials who had wanted Esperat dead. And the convicted killers said that they just needed money to pay for their sick mother, one of the killers said. Esperat is only one of the reported 53 journalists that have been killed since 2001, when the current president, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, came to power. This is the highest toll of journalist killings under any administration, far surpassing that of the 14-year Marcos dictatorship, or the combined death toll of 3 preceding administrations combined. And these 53 journalists are only part of the larger number of political killings. Countless other journalists continue to labor daily with threats to either their lives or freedoms hovering under their heads. According to Karapatan, a Philippine human rights group, since 2001, there have been 869 extrajudicial killings, 100 enforced disappearances, and over 1 million people forcibly displaced by increasing militarization of communities. So some of the pictures of the 869 people that have been killed are displayed behind me. They are priests. One of them is even a bishop. Trade union leaders, teachers, lawyers, women, and even children. There's one picture there of Grecil Buya, who is a 9-year-old girl living in Mindanao, who was killed by the military, and the military said that she was a New People's Army rebel. She was only 9 years old, and she couldn't even carry an Armalite, but the military said that she was an armed rebel, so she was killed. The majority of those killed were peasants living in the countryside with no political affiliation, and a large number of those killed were political activists, members of progressive people's organizations or political parties that are actively opposing the anti-people economic policies of the U.S. Arroyo regime. The Philippines is now the second most dangerous place for journalists, only after Iraq, according to Reporters Without Borders.